Hello everyone and welcome to another video on the ToLiss Airbus A321, and today we're going to look at some of the updates ToLiss have brought out for this airplane. I'm a real-world Airbus pilot, so hopefully we'll see if these bring the ToLiss closer to the real deal Airbus, but as always this is not for any real-world use, just for having a look at the home simulator and seeing the differences. So here we are, we're going to start off in the original, so we're in the version 1.02, but they just a couple of days ago brought out the version 1.03, so let's see what differences they've included in it, and hopefully they make for a better simulation experience. So if we have a look inside, the first thing I want to talk about that they have said they've added is a couple of things for the landing. So here we are on approach at Heathrow, as we've done in a few of my previous videos, all set up on final. And of course the big thing for this update is compatibility with Vulkan. So this is exactly the settings I'm going to use. I've got about 27 frames a second. So we're going to compare that shortly when we swap over to Vulkan, see if that's any better. This is in Heathrow with the Aerosoft Heathrow scenery, so that's quite detailed. It takes a bit of power, I'm sure. So they've said that they've changed the symbols on the PFD, so I'll be curious to see what's different. I actually think it's pretty good, but hopefully the new ones are even better. It's quite a good PFD, I think, compared to some of the others I have seen out there on the market. So we'll see if that looks any better. Also, a big thing for the 321 is a tail strike indicator on landing. So in the 321, we get these little arrows appear. They appear around about here on the PFD to make sure you keep the nose below. We use 7.5 degrees, although I don't think they actually point to 7.5 degrees. They're there because the Airbus, obviously the flight decks are all the same, and on the same day we can fly an A318, an A319 or an A320 or 21. So you might go from flying an empty Airbus A319 to a 90-ton Airbus A321. So to give us extra clues to make sure we don't strike the tail is really important, because all of the Airbus family uses 10 degrees in the short haul, except for the 321. Although I don't fly the 318, I don't know if it has different limits. I can't see why it would. So it's quite a useful feature to have those arrows there. And some airplanes actually shout pitch, pitch to warn you that you're reaching that 7.5 degrees. And that's quite a clever system, but it's not in the ToLiss at the moment. It's quite a complicated system as well. So let's go and have a look at the approach in the new version and see what differences it has made. So here we are now in the beta of X-Plane with the Vulkan update. I'll just show you the settings. And I've got use Vulkan driver for faster rendering selected. I've got the anti-aliasing, everything set as it was, although I've had to lower the texture quality. The first time I loaded up, I had it set to the maximum, and it got upset with me and said it could no longer do it. So I don't know if that was a change for Vulkan, or whether I need to update my drivers as well, which obviously I need to go and do regardless. But yeah, so otherwise the settings are the same. I just had to lower the texture quality by 1 notch. I can't be honest with you, I can't really see the difference, but that's where we are. So let's configure the airplane and have a look at the performance. It seems pretty stable on the outside, which is good. Definitely a slightly improved frame rate, as you would hope, and the sounds all work, which is great, because I haven't tried the F mod. I know that there's other sound variations people use for the Airbus, and I haven't tried them, but I'm a big fan of the ToLiss sounds. I think they're really quite good. So let's configure and check out some of the other differences that should have come into place. Oh, wrong one. Okay, so PFD, we said it's going to look different. Well, I've updated it. I think it looks slightly different. Something's changed. I think they changed the color of the PFD as well as some of the symbols. They said they changed some of the symbols in the LS, but it looks pretty good to me. It looked pretty good before, to be honest with you. So I'll be interested to see what you guys think. I'm not looking at this side by side. I've just swapped over, so I'm finding it hard to see, but I imagine it's more obvious in the final video. Also, we're going to see if we get our tail strike warning, which should come in just above this sort of 10-degree bar. The tail strike, we have a pitch limit of 7.5 degrees, although depending on the weight and so on, you won't actually strike the tail until you reach sort of the 10-degree limit. So the 7.5 is there to give us some margin as well. You have to be careful with the Airbus, because if you land with a really high pitch attitude in certain conditions, when the spoilers come up, the ground spoilers, they can actually cause a bit of a pitch up, and the nose will keep rising. So you've got to be careful not to get yourself into a tail strike situation like that. But here we go. Right, the big question, frame rates. So we were getting, what were we getting? Something like 27 last time, 25 to 30 is a maximum. And here we are sitting at a steady 30 with those settings as I showed you, which are exactly the same. And as I said, this is with the Aerosoft scenery. I don't know if Vulkan works better or worse with additional scenery, but it's pretty much the same. But definitely a bit more stable at 30. Yeah, we're getting it above 30 now. So 3 or 4 frames a second improvement for sure. So I'll be curious to see how it handles other sort of situations. See if we get an improvement. And here we go. It might be as we get closer and it's rendering this scenery that's taking some power out of the processor and so on. Perhaps once it's loaded up, we'll see that improve. There we go. There's our tail strike warning. So that's good. That's on the PFD now. Big red marker. To be honest though, pilot flying isn't looking at the PFD for landing. So it's a good reminder on sort of the 500 feet point when you look inside. But apart from that, for landing you're looking out. So it can be quite useful, or it becomes very important for pilot monitoring to pay attention. Oh, let's do an auto land, why not? Thrust harden and flare. There it goes. How are we doing for our frame rates? Back down to 20, 27, 32. Yeah, seems to be improving as we get spend more time on the ground here. 35. Okay, great. Let's go and have a look at some of the other features of this update. Next I want to look at some other features, so we're here up in the cruise to get a look at that. I know the frame rate should be improved, as I mentioned earlier. I'm not going to do a big comparison of the two too much, but we'll just get a rough idea. There's been lots of comparisons out there for the improvements Vulkan brings. But what I will say is I'm just using X-Plane 11. A couple of plugins that I've got are Fly with Lua, which I use for a water script, and better pushback, Avitab, X checklist. So I've not got anything too demanding. XP UIC I just use for the overlay when I'm streaming. So my frame rates haven't really changed since I got X-Plane, and I'm sitting here in the cruise at about 26, 27. So similar frame rate as we saw earlier. This is while I'm recording. My specs, if anyone's interested, I've got an i7-6700 HQ, it's a laptop processor, and a GTX 1060 in a laptop as well, obviously. So that's where I get this from, and I've got 16 gigabytes of RAM, which does help, I think, with the textures, and also the graphics card, I think, has about 6 gigabytes of VRAM. Okay, so some of the things the ToLiss has changed that we can look at here. Well, finally, we are able to adjust we should be able to adjust the thrust reduction acceleration for the go-round. So if we look here at the moment, if I wanted to make that 1,000 and 1,000, which is something you absolutely can do in the real airplane, it just won't have it. Not interested. And we can try to put 1,000 for engine acceleration because 480 is very low. No, it won't have it. And in a lot of airlines, what you'll put in here is actually the go-around platform altitude. So the altitude to which you will go around and level off. Because in a single engine go-around, you will climb at your maximum rate all the way up to that altitude. So that doesn't work at the moment, so we'll see if the update improves that. Okay, so here we are back in the cruise, and let's see how this update has affected our cruise items. So let's have a look. If we go into the FMGC, we should now be able to change the thrust reduction acceleration altitude for the go-around. Let's say I wanted it 1,000 and 1,000. Hooray! Can I change the engine out acceleration? Yes, there we go. That's absolutely something we would do. So that would go to the platform altitude. So maybe that would be 3,000 feet or whatever it is in your approach. Great. So they've done a good job there. Vulkan performance up here, 30 frames a second. I mean, yeah, I'd say maybe 3 or 4 frames a second on average better. It seems quite smooth. And I've got some quite good settings compared to what I've always had. I mean, like I said, this is exactly as we had it before. I might be tempted to try. I tried earlier drawing the shadows on the scenery. Didn't seem to make as much of a difference to the frame rate as it previously used to. So maybe I'll give that a go and see. Good. What else were we looking at up here? Flight level altitude. So let's have a go. That should stay as a flight level now all the way down to the ground. There it is. Absolutely. That is what it would do until I change it to QNH. And then it's an altitude. Brilliant. So it's really good that they've worked on it and brought it up to par really with what people were asking for. That's great. It's nice to see these updates coming out for it. Next thing was the hydraulics and windmilling. So what we'll do, I'll do it slightly better than last time. I'll put it more as an engine failure in the cruise sort of thing. So let's start a descent. So we're going down to 260 and let's shut down that engine. Number 2 goes offline. We see it rapidly lose out. N2 should wind down. We'll bring that speed right back. Leave it to MCT. And now I would expect to see that hydraulic loss, but it seems to be completely powering itself still. So perhaps there's a different scenario where they're expecting that. Maybe I've interpreted this wrong, because I would expect the PTU would need to run now to get that to work. Maybe we'll try lower down or at a slower airspeed. So let's see here if we can get that N2 to reduce down, and there you go, it's windmilling much lower now, down to 12%. Get the thrust levers to MCT, and there we go, we see the hydraulic pressure lost. So I'm not entirely sure, I must admit, about that engine failure in the cruise, whether that would power the hydraulics or not. Either way, as you can see, the PTU will come online on its own. If we start to put out the flaps, come back on that speed even more, we'll come back to S speed. We should see that. Yeah, there we go. It's just not managing, and the PTU is having to do it because N2 is only going around at 9%. So that's an interesting lesson for me. I need to have a look. I haven't got any idea in my head, to be honest, whether it would windmill or not in the cruise enough to power the hydraulics. Interesting. So there we go. So it certainly does work here, and you can hear that PTU running in the background, that barking dog noise. Great. So that's it. Oh, wow. Okay. Something's gone wrong with my water textures. I might need to change that back to the default or something like that. I wonder what I've done there. Plenty of things to learn with this new update. Thank you all very much for watching the video today. Something slightly different as we talk about this update. More videos and tutorials coming soon, as well as some more flights and hopefully some more streams. So thank you very much for watching. See you again soon.